appointed hour, and a quorum being present, I'd like to call this meeting of the Watuppa Water Board to order. First item will be pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Item number 1, citizen input.
Do we want to do roll call?
No, I'm sorry, roll call.
Member Ferrer,
Here.
Member Collins,
Here.
President Terry.
Here. Thank you. Okay, citizen input. We have no citizen input. Moving to number 2 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting.
So on the minutes, I do apologize with the changing of staff. We're a bit behind on some stuff. If you'd like to table them until the next meeting, we can have them available.
Chair would entertain a motion to table the minutes until the next meeting.
Motion made.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving to number 3. Item number 3, leak abatements. Okay. Mr. Clerk.
So within your packet, you were provided a list of abatements. There is 7 to be approved and 3 to be denied.
Okay. How would you like to do this? We've got the explanation behind all of them. If there are no questions on the proposed appeals, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the community utility appeals for the meeting of 11/3 in the number of the total will be $3,455.59, and we are denying 3 requests. And the reason for the denial is spoken in the packet notes, and I believe the 3 denials are because the leaks are ineligible. That being the case, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the appeals as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
All of the denials were because the bill was not doubled.
Yeah, one of them was every September. For the past number of years, they had
Notice
same increase, so they didn't have 4 quarters where they were below the normal. And then the other ones they were not. Yes.
Okay, moving right along. Item number 4 is the Saudi Pond Dam Improvements Proposal for the Dam and Seawall Grant. This is a very interesting program. Long overdue in Saudi Pond Dam. I had one question I would like to just, one of the things PAR Engineering is discussing here is clearing, grubbing the embankment. I know that embankment, I've fished there myself over the years. It's kind of a steep embankment. And I was just wondering, they're talking about seeding that. Is there any option other than something that would have to be mowed?
Like a riprap or something?
Well, I was thinking something more I mean, riprap is expensive. I was just wondering if it was something that'd be a little more habitat friendly, birds, that kind of a thing. It seems, not to belabor the point, but it just seems that we've got an awful lot of grass in areas where it'd be kind of nice if we had milkweed and things like that that would support the.
Yeah. So the one thing on the embankments, we always want to make sure that there's not any type of vegetation that's going to have a deep root system that
Okay.
could potentially go in and disturb the actual dam or any sub-drains or anything that's involved. A milkweed or something like that, I don't believe has a deep root system. Chris could probably be more of an expert on that, on what could potentially be used in a situation.
Yes.
So we could look at potentially something with a lower maintenance than a grass.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, that the spec for that, when it's written, is gonna call for some type of a conservation mix, which most of the time is not really it's not an aggressive growing mix. It would be a seed blend that, and with a little bit of research and maybe help from Mike, we could put together a custom seed mix that would work well there, would be low maintenance, slower growing or shorter growing, but that would still be primarily grassy plant material.
Yeah.
There are a number of seed mixes available, which a lot of the conservation seed mixes get really pricey really quickly. But I wouldn't expect that to be seeded with, it shouldn't be a ryegrass blend that's on that. I would assume it's gonna be some type of a native seed mix.
Yeah, and another thing, just we want to be able to get out there every so often to be able to mow it,
Yeah.
just so we don't get any trunky tree vegetation or brushy vegetation and with the root system that could potentially damage the infrastructure.
It was just a question that popped
Yeah,
into my
no,
mind.
definitely something that we can keep in mind throughout the design of that project.
Mhm. Are there any questions from the members of the board regarding the Saudi Pond dam improvement? If there are no questions, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the proposal as submitted and approve that for signing.
Yeah, so just for the record, the proposal is $198,000. City portion is $49,500. We have a grant from the Dam and Seawall Grant Program in the amount of $148,500.
And this is for, I'm sorry, may I?
Yeah, absolutely,
This is
please.
for design and, this isn't for the actual construction of this, correct? This is design and construction management fees or OPM?
Not construction management.
Okay.
So this is design permitting, brings us up to about bidding.
Perfect.
And then we would have to extend out or pick project managers and CMRI at that time.
Following Commissioner Collins's question, are they going to be redesigning the flashboards in that?
So like we did at Stafford Pond, that would be my expectation.
Yeah.
Stafford Pond, we went in and we redid all the wing walls and
Yes.
all the structures and stuff like that. This, I think we're gonna really do a deep evaluation to see what the structural integrity of those current structures are. Something that's been in place, the wing walls and where the board sliding and everything is there, but as you can, the concrete's pretty eroded in you know, in areas. It's weathered. It's
Yeah.
concrete that's been there for probably long time. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I was gonna say
100
since-
years, if not somewhere close to there. So whether it's a full reconstruction of the spillway area or not, because there's actually that spillway. The dam is actually primarily considered Route 177.
Yes.
So, and then the embankments come down the side of 177. That's actually still considered part of the dam itself. And then actually to the west, there's a separate emergency spillway that's almost just a culvert pipe that crosses under 177 as well. So there's a couple of different aspects to this, but where the primary spillway is, we'll be evaluating that, and I would suspect that it'd probably be a reconstruction of that spillway and where the splash boards are.
The city portion of this would be 49,500,
Yes.
and that will be coming from?
So we have an authorization that was authorized back in 2007, I believe it was, or 2010, for dam rehabilitation. Yeah, I believe it was after the 2010 storms when there was a lot of dam failures within the area. The city authorized $3.6 million for dam revitalization, which is what has funded most of our projects to date. So we still have that authorization open and available with the funding in it for this project.
And then, okay, and that, the 49 would be in the form of a loan?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
So no.
Hearing none, we have a motion to approve the proposal for the dam and seawall grant for Saudi Pond in the amount of $148,500.
190,
I'm sorry.
198.
198,
I'm sorry. I'm looking.
the grant portion.
I'm sorry. You'll have to excuse my brain fog tonight. Yeah, the proposal to Park Corporation is in the amount of $198,000 with the city portion of $49,500 and the grant portion of $148,500. Thank you.
Second.
Motion made, seconded, all in
Yep.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Item number 5, Adirondack Farm acquisition. Long sought.
Yes, it is. So this is something that I'm glad that we can bring to the board. Michael Bossi, our forester, has probably dreamt of this day many times and has worked very, very hard on this project.
He certainly
Mike, if
has.
you want to talk a little bit about there. So what you have just in your packet, you have an order to purchase, which essentially will go to the city council for the purchase of the property. There is also a order to purchase for one of the grant fundings that we got, which was the land grant. And also there's a copy of the purchase and sales that we currently have on the property with the current owners. The property is located off of Blossom Road, about 7.1 acres. Has been used historically as a farm with a barn and a farmhouse on the property. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about the project?
Sure.
So we have some pictures from some of the studies, if you want.
Sure. So we have, the city has had a dialogue with the Pinault family, which is Jean and Lucy Pinault, for maybe 2 decades. It was always our hope to protect the farmland. There's about 7 acres of farmland in addition to the house and the lot that the house sits on. It's a historic farm. It's been farmed for over 150 years. It's had different iterations of family ownership. There were Bordens, there were Freeloves, and most recently, the Pinault family has been the stewards of this property for over 40 years. And a lot of people are familiar with it because it was the former Adirondack petting farm.
Yes.
And school kids and adults with kids would go and, you know, see the livestock, and the family really set it up for an educational experience. And so as time went on and we discussed the idea of protecting the land, it sort of became natural to think about, maybe since we were looking for a environmental education center, which is something that the Bioreserve Partners envisioned 20 years ago, this would make a great site for it. It's one of the only residences on Blossom Road which has a view of the North Watuppa Pond, and of course our stake in the bioreserve is water protection. I mean, every one of the Bioreserve Partners have a sort of a different a different mission, but ours is really protection of the water supply. So it became apparent that this would be a great place to embark on teaching the public the importance of our water supply, educating them as to what we do to protect it, and just an entree into the bioreserve, which is a 16,000 acre protected forest. So this, and I have to say, the Pinault family has been very gracious, as has been a lot of the families that we've acquired land to protect our water supplies. It really has been, we're able to work with families who have an empathy or a sympathy toward our mission, which is to protect land, to protect the water supply. And so they agreed that this would be something they'd be interested in, and over time we negotiated a price that would be a fair price to them, and then here we are. So we strove to have this agreement, and then we've been trying to line up the funding, and we're almost there doing that. So it's a 7 acre. There's literally 7 fields, farm fields. They're surrounded by stone walls. The house is over 150 years old. It's a historic house, a historic barn. It's just a beautiful setting, and a setting that somewhat represents, 150 or 100 years ago, this other side of Fall River, which was really rural. We're really used to the urban and the mills and all of that, which is so important. But the water supply that the city started protecting as early as the 1890s was protecting farmland, and this is a real sort of a symbol of what that was, and it's going to be an outstanding place to have a discovery center. So we're really excited about it.
Want to go to the next slide? So as Mike mentioned, we've the house we expect to reuse as the Discovery Center, the house in the barn. What that would be, it's almost it's right as you enter and start to come into the bioreserve and the different resources that we have out in that area. So nice area to be able to have a welcome center or a close educational center for kids from Fall River schools or other surrounding communities to be able to go, to be able to interact with nature, see what nature's about. So prior, there was a couple of slides about some of what the house looks like now. It's been used by the family for a number of years. A couple of years ago, we actually had Mike had Roger Williams University come in and look at the possible reuse of the house and what could be done. So this was one of the pictures. Picture in the downstairs of the house being used as a welcome area, a classroom area in the back. Second floor, potentially office space for staff, with an addition off the side as a large meeting room, a lecture hall that could be utilized by different groups, board meetings, or other things like that. So on the next slide, Olga. So the next slide, everybody says you guys are crazy because we're going to spend $820,000 on purchasing this piece of property. But let me run through the funding plan that we have and is what is laying out here. So the purchase price of the property, $820,000. That was not far off from what the appraisal came in at. The current rates of the market for a piece that size that could be used in multiple different ways. So we've included an acquisition expense of $13,500 and a conservation recreation holding fee of $15,000, which we've talked to some of the partners, which there might not even be a fee by them for holding that. So where are we going to get the money to purchase the property? So the funding source is EOEEA land grant, which was awarded to us about a month ago. I think the awards came out. So from the Bristol County ARPA funds, $365,000. So Bristol County ARPA, I applied for 1.365 million to go towards this project, and it has been awarded by the Bristol County Treasury. And then also CPC, we put in a CPC grant application for $415,000. We've been through their eligibility round. They seemed very excited about the project, so we are hoping that that their funding will come through. So that's for the property acquisition. You know, when me and Mike were looking at this project, we just didn't want to acquire this property and have it sit there and not be used or be able to be utilized. We wanted to make sure that there was a strong funding plan in place to be able to redevelop it. Our plan is hopefully to be able to work with some of the local vocational schools to assist with some of the work to be done out there, and that's why. So CPC, within our CPC grant application, we have $200,000 allocated for to assist with the historic restoration of the buildings out there. And then in the ARPA funding, the additional $1 million from the Bristol County ARPA funds will be going towards the renovations at the visitor center. Visitor center by Discovery Center. This project was talked about, as Mike said, back when the bioreserve was originally started, and it never really got off the ground. Right now, I gotta say, we're getting really good motivation with our group, with other groups within the state, within the region, that are really backing this. There's potentially another funding source that we just heard about today that may be coming down the line to assist with additional. So far, besides Mike's time, my time, water ratepayers haven't had to pay anything towards this, and we're not right now with this funding plan. It's there's going to be some maintenance costs and stuff like that, which we will assist with. But so far for the capital expenditures, we haven't planned on putting anything into it from our ratepayers. Again, maintenance costs moving forward, depending on staffing and stuff like that. Other partners that we've been talking with, the Audubon Society, trustees of the reservations, who are great partners out there, DCR, who are great partners out there. So I think this is going to be a really multi-group, to really put this together.
20 years has gone by very quickly, too quickly, in fact, for some of us. When we began negotiating the bioreserve, this was a dream that we had, was to have a visitor's center, to have an educational center, to reinforce just how important the drinking water supply is to the city, to the citizens for sure, but to the area in particular. And it's nice to see the support that's coming in from various groups here. I would like to congratulate Mike on a lot of hard work that went into this. As I say, 20 years has gone by real quick, but I remember 25 years ago talking with Mike about this particular piece of property because it's shoreline. It's one of our, this is an opportunity to purchase shoreline and prevent a potential problem from development. This would be a plum piece of property out there. And for the water department, for the water board to be able to purchase this property, especially with the grant funding available, and as you have said, at no cost to the ratepayers at this time, that this is a fantastic opportunity. It's just a fantastic opportunity. I couldn't be happier. Like I said, it's something we dreamed about, and now it's here. And without any further ado, the chair would entertain a motion to proceed with the Adirondack Farm acquisition with approval of the order to purchase in the amount of $820,000.
Absolutely. Yes, make a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Thank you. Okay, item number 6, proposal South Watuppa Green Infrastructure Blue Water Project. This is very interesting as well. And the chair would appreciate it if the clerk would review what we have here from Woodward and Curran.
Yeah, so again, moving forward with the South Watuppa Pond project.
So,
You know, it's something that we've been working on for the past 3 years or so now, since there was an issue that came up a number of years ago that came to light about the blue-green algae effects on the South Watuppa Pond. So the pond has been impacted for years and years and years of blue-green algae, it needs to be fixed at some point. So it's kind of come to light. There's been a group of local people. We were lucky enough last year to be able to get a grant from Bay Coast Bank to be able to do a phase 1 study on the pond, to be able to kind of start to figure out what's going on in the pond. We've had great support from the local delegation in that area, Rep. Schmidt, as well as Senator Mike Rodrigues. Were able to get some money appropriated to continue the study through this summer.
yeah.
We were able to work with the surrounding communities to be able to submit a grant through the MVP program, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, to get some funding to start to design some of the work that came out of that phase 1 study. So what we're looking at is our original grant proposal actually to the MVP was for the design and the construction. They didn't feel they felt that we should move forward and design the projects and then potentially come back for another grant application for the construction of the projects, which is okay. So they did grant us the ability to be able to move forward with the design. Overall, we're going to be designing a number of projects that surround the pond. Two of them actually in Fall River. One of them in drainage runoff that comes from Tiverton, and one drainage runoff that comes from Westport. So in the boat ramp down next to the 994 Jefferson Street complex off the end of Jefferson Street, we'll be designing the bioretention area for the runoff from that parking lot. On top of that, we'll be designing a infiltration retrofit for Cherry Lane drainage. So that's off of Lake Avenue area, down off of Hancock Street. is a Cherry Lane subdivision that is in Tiverton,
Yeah.
which all drains down into a retention pond, then comes down into the South Watuppa Pond. So being able to filter out phosphorus and nutrients from that point source, we'll be designing that up. Tickle Road and Shavit Street over in Westport is another point source, another runoff location that comes down into the South Watuppa. So again, we'll be looking to design a BMP for that area to reduce the pollutant loading coming down. The big one of the ones that I'm pretty excited about is Sucker Brook wetland restoration and water quality enhancement, which is the large wetland area that is to the west of the 994 Jefferson Street complex. That area is underutilized as a wetland and floodplain area. There's upstream flooding issues and stuff like that. So this contract will help us start to do the hydraulic analysis study and bring us up to permitting to be able to potentially move that project, being able to reutilize that as a functional wetland for both flooding resources as well as reduction of pollutants going into the South Watuppa Pond. So kind of a pretty good project for the South Watuppa Pond. South Watuppa Pond, like I said, we were able to get funding for the studies this past year from the state, so we continued with our sampling in the pond this year, and we'll be continuing again next year. I have some funding potentially lined up from another source, a mitigation project that was required to be done, grant funding from that to be able to go towards this project. But this project, this contract that we're looking at, is a total of $506,200. The funding sources for this project, again, $379,875 is from the MVP grant program. So that's the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, which is a grant fund. And then there's a 25% match, which will be coming from the Bristol County ARPA funds. That has been approved just recently by the Bristol County Treasury for funding this project. So again, this is another project that isn't going to cost our ratepayers anything. As the board knows, we do have an intermunicipal agreement with both Westport and Tiverton. Yes. So this was put into MVP as a regional project. The other thing actually that I didn't mention about the project, we're going to be working with a local group, Groundworks, on a bunch of public outreach and stuff in relation to this as well. So
I saw that with using the Atlantis Charter School. I think that's outstanding.
Yeah, so Groundworks uses a lot of different, they use multiple different schools. They hire kids from the community to and teach them about green infrastructure, teach them about being able to make their communities a more sustainable area, but they really put them to work too. So they hire them, they pay them to develop and do public outreach, to develop the flyers that we send out, to develop the presentations that we do and stuff like that. So it's they've been really active in New Bedford and have done some great things in New Bedford. They've been around in New Bedford for, I want to say, about 5 or 6 years now. And originally they were set up to be New Bedford and Fall River Partnership. So now we're starting to move them into the Fall River area.
This is a tremendous step forward in helping the South Watuppa Pond to recover. I was interested when I was reading of the boat ramp bioretention retrofit. I found that very interesting, but I found the Sucker Brook improvements to be something that is long overdue, and that is going to help that pond immensely. immensely. They're going to be looking at going up as far as 81.
Yeah, but potentially,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there's another number of benefits that could be had in that area. You know, to do that whole project, it's gonna be a pretty hefty cost, but again, it's gonna be a flood mitigation project as well as a enhancement, BMP for the water quality. You know, already thinking to the next steps, which is how I always try to think. You know, there potentially may be some grant funding either through the hazard mitigation program or the flood management program through FEMA that could potentially fund the construction in the future.
We, you know, again, going back historically, two things. We, once upon a time, actually shipped water from the south to the north. Although the south is not regarded as a water supply, cleaning it up would certainly help. The other thing is that with the rowing center and the popularity that that has brought to the pond, and the fact that the pond has an Olympic course that can be laid out, and going over the, they had the school championships this year on the pond. Last year.
Yep.
That was last year. I think they, what was it, 1,000 competitors?
Yeah, I think they said they had at least 1,000 competitors and twice that in people that came.
Yeah, they were saying today it was 2,000 people that brought 2,000 spectators into the community.
That's incredible. That is just incredible. Outstanding.
Yeah, you know, yeah, South Watuppa is emergency water supply, and I don't think it's been since '81 where we've transferred from
Yes.
south to
Well,
north.
it actually was higher than the north at that time,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that's why it worked.
But, you know, again, we do have the area on South Watuppa for a treatment facility. That's what that property we own there is slated for. Eventually, you know, again, we saw what happened this past year with the drought condition this past summer. Luckily, Fall River, we were in good shape because we had South Watuppa Pond. We had Copacut, which we were able to pump from Copacut to the North Watuppa Pond. So North Watuppa Pond stayed very well compared to other communities everywhere around the state, watering bans and real drought conditions, which caused
It's a testimony.
issues.
But, I mean, we got through this year without water restrictions or any form of curtailment. That's,
Yeah, but as other areas potentially dry up, we may be supplying further than we are now, so.
you know, not to get crazy over it, but that is something that has been discussed over and over and over as the potential that we still hold in water rights that can be, with work, they can be utilized if necessary. And although in 2022, we're doing just fine, thank you, who knows what another 100 years brings, another 50 years brings. I mean, we don't know. It's just cleaning up the South Pond, long overdue, long overdue. And without any further ado, if there are any questions regarding this, the chair would entertain a motion to accept the proposal from Woodward and Curran in the amount of $506,200 for the Watuppa Green Infrastructure Blue Water Project.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So passed. My favorite subject. Lead Service Administrative Consent Order Update. Before Mr. Ferlin goes on to explain what has been going on, I would just like to state for the record that Mr. Furlan has worked tirelessly on this ACO. And the fact that it is in the shape that it is today is a testimony to Paul's actions. I followed along with him, but I can tell you he has worked tirelessly over and over and over this ACO, and I thank him for his efforts, because without it, I think the city would have, we certainly would not have ended up in the position that we currently are, which is the best situation possible under these conditions. And this was brought on by both the federal and state administrators, Massachusetts having primacy, the EPA sort of delegated to Mass to enforce this, and they have. And that's where we stand today. So if Mr. Furlan would like to give us a brief overview.
Yeah, I don't know how brief I'll be, but because I want to be very thorough and make sure that the board.
Oh, I was hoping it was going to be brief. I mean, you know.
I know you were trying for that.
Oh, I was. I'll tell you what, though. I cannot say it enough. Paul has worked unbelievably hard on this. This is really.
I thank you for that, but there's a lot of people that would work on it. So.
Yeah, I get that, but you go to sleep with this thing on your mind.
As President Terrio said, we've been working for a while now, back and forth with DEP and EPA to come to a resolution. And we've kind of hit the end point now where we need to come to this resolution, or potentially we may get a unilateral. We would get a unilateral order from the agencies mandating us what to do, which I can probably guarantee wouldn't be anywhere close to what's in this ACO.
That goes without saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So within this ACO, it lays out, so the first section is the statement of facts in law. You go through the statement of the facts, and there's a number of, there's some facts that they state, DEP in here. There's some claims that they make, which claims are claims that they feel are relevant, but may not be 100%. And then there's also some other facts stated towards the end in relation to things that we've been able to get done. So that's the first part of the order, and I know this is hot off the presses. I got this just before I forwarded it to you guys. Then you get into the order part of it, and this kind of tells us what we need to do. So to kind of summarize it, EPA and DEP, they want us to be responsible to replace any lead service, the whole entire service, from the main all the way into the meter. They want that to be the cost of the water department and not the cost of the homeowners. In Fall River, part of the problem that we have is we have a very high rate of people that are below the medium household income for the state. Out of our 19 tracts within the city, 17 of them need economic justice tracts based on the state census. So, you know, their feeling is that a fair amount of the city, the homeowners or residents of the cities would not be able to possibly afford to be able to replace the lead service from the curb stop into their house. Even though in the past we have offered a credit program, which was a program where we issue a $500 credit onto the bill for anybody that replaces their service, but with the partial replacement of the service costing almost $4,000 per service, you know, $500 credit on their bill is very minimal. You know, we looked at different programs of potentially taking in, you know, doing different types of spending and how to charge it, but you know, there's a lot of different things that are going on right now. I've just read the whole entire claim against Providence, the Providence Water Board, by a couple of organizations. Their claims included the fact where, so Providence had a program where a homeowner could borrow up to $4,500 at 0% interest and repay it over 10 years back to the water department to use to replace their lead service. Their claims against the Providence Water District was that that is discriminatory against people that aren't eligible to be able to pay that back. And the kind of what I've heard is that the rulings may go in favor of the claims that have been made in that way. So for us to disproportionately allocate a cost to potentially the EJ household isn't something that the regulatory agencies were going to be party to. So they're saying we're going to have to burden the cost. With the change of the revised lead and copper rules coming up in 2024, there's the lead and copper rules right now that were implemented in 1997, and now they have the revised lead and copper rules that are implemented in October 15th, I think, 2024. Yeah, fast approaching. Within that revised lead and copper rule, it also states that a lead service cannot be considered removed from your system unless it is a full lead service. So all the way from the main into the house. The other issue, there's also studies that have been done that show that you are better off if you're going to not do the full lead service. There's EPA studies that show you're better off leaving the whole entire lead service and not removing a portion of it, because that may spike the levels of lead that people within the household are going to ingest into their body. So again, those are a lot of the cases that, you know, the discussions that went back and forth through this whole entire process. So what it comes down to essentially, and what we're looking to agree to, is a number of lead services to be replaced. The numbers that we have would be 400 by December of 23, 600 by January 1st of 24, excuse me, by December 31st of 24.
Okay.
600 by December
25.
of 25, and then another 400 by December of 26. That's 2,000 lead services within a 4-year period. That's a pretty big number.
That's aggressive.
Yes, it is. But I always like to think that I don't propose an issue without a solution.
As you always do.
I try to. Not always, but I try to. This roughly totals up to about $17 million, which is a hefty chunk of change.
Yes, it is.
There's three funding sources that we're looking at. There's one funding source, very low, that's to be announced yet, but it is a funding source that's going to come through as long as we don't get a unilateral order, essentially. Which is going to have no cost to the ratepayers. I would propose to the city council. The city council has allocated $6 million in the Bristol County ARPA funds to go towards water and sewer projects. I would recommend to them that $3 million of that go towards lead service removal.
Yes.
I'll also be coming back to the commission with looking for an authorization of $4.6 million. That $4.6 million, and that's an authorization for loans. That $4.6 million, what that allows us to do is be able to use the bipartisan infrastructure law funding. So all of the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, all the funding that's coming down from that bill for water and sewer and stormwater projects is being funneled through the SRF program as a principal reduction. So the principal reduction that we'll be getting can vary anywhere 30-60%. Who knows what that principal reduction will be? I don't think it will be any less than 30, based on standard principal reductions that we've received in the past with the bipartisan infrastructure law principal reduction passed. So essentially, for these first 4 years, we'd be looking at a $17 million project with my estimate right now would be maybe $3 billion in loans. That will wipe out over 2,000 lead services within the city. Currently, we have 3,800 or so full and partial lead services throughout the city. So 756 full within our inventory, and 2,800 change in partials, and then another 109. So that's homeowner partials and 109 from the main to the curb stop partials. So again, and we'll have to deal with those. So after 2027. We'll still be committed to another 400 per year. The other thing that we're doing right now, and this process has also helped us, is we're updating all of our inventories. So for the revised lead and copper rule, by 2024, we have to have a full inventory of all of our services throughout the city. So we've always had an inventory of the lead services. This needs to be every single service that feeds a house or a property in the city and what the material is. We've been able to get a principal reduction loan. So it's a loan of $750,000, which the board previously approved a contract for, but it's 100% principal reduction. So essentially, it's costing us nothing to be able to do that full inventory, be able to do that full search. So by 2024, prior to 2024, it's laid out in here. It's in 6 months we'll have the inventory for DEP. Within 12 months we'll have the lead service plan. So we'll have those inventories, really hard numbers, where they are, what they are. The whole entire inventory process that I set up actually includes people knocking on the door, going into the house to see whether, because we need solid numbers. We can't be guessing anymore moving forward. We need to know what's in every house. So this program helps us get to that point. Some of the other things that are, so that's the big one, that's the big ticket item in here. How many lead services are we gonna replace?
Mr. Furlong, can I ask a question?
Yes.
The 3,800, that includes residential and commercial properties?
Yes.
Do we also have to incur the cost for the commercial properties?
We would have to incur for any property. So lead services are minimal on commercial properties, just due to the size of the
Good
service.
question.
Yeah.
Your typically smaller 5/8 services would be the lead service. So,
Okay.
but yeah, we would need to incur for both, any property. It'll discern in here whether it's commercial or residential.
I don't think it was.
That was discussed at length with both the state and federal on conference calls, and there was no yielding whatsoever by the state or the feds as to what we were going to do. We were going to replace the lead services. My biggest fear or concern was replacing or paying for lead services as part of the user fee. And I believe we are going to be very successful in not incurring costs that would be passed on through the user fee for the removal of lead services.
They'll be greatly minimized.
Greatly minimized.
So, does anybody else have any questions at this point? All right. So just some of the other things that are in here, within 90 days, we'll provide them all the forms that we'll be providing to residents for information about lead service, customer notices, access agreements, and stuff like that. Because essentially, we're gonna have to have a contract to go on to the private property. So the contractor will have to get consent to be able to go on to the private property. The homeowners will have the ability to opt out of replacing their lead service, which, you know, I don't think is beneficial. You know, the whole point of this whole entire program is to get the lead out of the drinking water system. Keep children safe, keep people safe, and keep, you know, lead down within, stop it from getting within people through the drinking water system. So people that want to opt out, they definitely can. Will be required to sign it, and they'll be taken off the list at that point and put on a do not replace list. And we'll continue to send them public education information about their lead service to try to get it. You know, so within the 90 days, we need to get all that stuff to DEP. Within 120 days, we need to provide them a lead service removal plan, which I'm comfortable that we'll be able to achieve. As I said, the 6 months for the service inventory, 12 months for the for a larger lead service removal plan, and then we need to comply with the October 16th, 2024 date for the full inventory. There will be annual reports due and quarterly reports due. Quarterly reports will be due quarterly throughout the year, on the 15th after the end of the quarter. Annual report will be due when our standing reporting is done January the 10th after the close of the year. One of the other things that they're requiring in here is whenever a lead service is replaced, which this is a requirement within the revised lead and copper rule that we would have to do in October of 2024 anyways, is we would have to provide anybody that we change their lead service out with a water pitcher, filter pitcher. So I know my Fall River accent is coming in there a little bit, but so like a Brita type filter pitcher that will allow them to use with 6 months worth of filters because the EPA has studies shown that right after a lead replacement, with disturbance of that and the other plumbing system around it, there could be an increase in lead. So we will provide that to each household within a building, either us or the contractors. So we'll be providing that. There'll be sampling that'll be required after the lead service replacement as well. But besides that, it goes into boilerplate. So this is an ACOP, which is a consent order, an administrative consent order with penalty. So the penalty that they've assessed is $25,300. That penalty, though, will be stayed, and as long as we don't violate this order within 3 years, it will then be vacated.
3 years of
Excellent.
2024 or 3 years of when the order begins?
The execution of the order.
Thank you.
So, that kind of runs through again. If we violate the order, that's when there's penalties of $500 per day. I don't expect that we're going to violate this order though. This is, this is a big lift. This is a big burden for the city. But I think right now, with a lot of the resources that are out there, it's going to be a good time to get this done, get lead services out of our hair, and just be done with it.
Yeah. $17 million is certainly a large amount of money. But buffering that large amount of money is the availability of funds. And again, a lot of hard work in applying for grants and different funding sources. So we need to get this passed, because this has been hanging and hanging and hanging, and it's not going anywhere, and it could have resulted in some serious penalties. It could have resulted in some very serious action from the governing body.
Yeah, so let me talk just a little bit about that. So if we were not to go into a consent order with DEP, if we were to go with the unilateral, tell DEP, no, we don't want to do this, give us what you're going to give us. So essentially, they would develop a unilateral order. I expect that the service numbers would be somewhere between 700 and 1,000 per year, would be my guess, that they would require us to replace. A lot of the other things would be a lot more stringent in here as well. The problem with the unilateral order, so some people might say, okay, take the unilateral order and just appeal it. But the problem is with this type of unilateral order, it has to do with public, they say it has to do with public health and safety, which it does. So even if you appeal the order stays in place. And as you're going through the appeal process, you still have to follow the order. So, and then you're in front of a potential judge and everything else like that. The other concerns that I really have is what that would do with our ability to get grant funding. If the water department's, our capacity rating, which dropped last year from adequate to conditional, if we were dropped to inadequate, that could potentially seriously hurt our ability to get current grant funds that are allocated to us, or any type of future grant funding that we would apply for. So, you know, just going through tonight, the amount of grant funding that I went over, you know, that we applied tonight towards different projects, we might not be able to get that if this goes. a
There's no
different way.
doubt in my mind we wouldn't. Just a little historic reference here. When the state revolving loan fund first developed, Fall River applied, and we were denied every year, every single year. And the reason was we weren't an enterprise fund. Our rate didn't support our budget. We were constantly using the general fund to run the water department. And the state came down and said, no, you cannot do that. You've got to do this the way we want it done. And so we did. And immediately after that, we began to get SRF funding. And we started the 42-7 plan, and the rest is history. The state is not fooling around on this, and they would, in my opinion, have had punitive action towards the city. We know what happened, and again, I'm sorry to bring up past history, but we know what happened when the city balked at a sewerage CSO order and ended up in federal court, and what happened then. So in my opinion, what we have here is an outstanding agreement, hammered out. We gave a little, they gave a little, everybody came to agreement, and we're going to have to proceed. That's all there is to it. I can't say enough. I was kind of shocked at the percentage that was referenced in here, that Fall River is an environmental justice community with 77% of the population living in environmental justice designated block groups. Often we don't really realize exactly how the outside looks at us, from the state and federal level. That's a real eye-opener. And in this case, it's going to help us. So without any further ado, unless there are any further questions, concerns, the chair would very happily entertain a motion to proceed with the ACO. You need a vote to go forward with the acceptance.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we would need a motion to proceed with accepting the ACO as presented this evening.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry,
That's,
I tried to be as brief as possible.
no, and please, I know I'm sort of meandering around on a couple of things. I can't tell you how happy I am that we just voted on this, because this was really serious. And thank you, Paul, for your efforts and your staff's efforts. Geez, a lot of work.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on rapidly to item number 8, updates on ongoing projects. Our first is a letter of award for flowable fill to Preferred Concrete in the amount of $50,000. Preferred was the only bidder,
Yep.
so this is rather straightforward. So the chair would entertain a motion to approve the bid total in the amount of $50,442 for flowable controlled density fill and concrete for fiscal year 2023.
So as these are under the 50,000, does it need to be a board vote?
Oh,
So more informational on these.
did you say under 50?
Well, this one is 50, yeah. So it was 50,000.
442. Okay. So we don't need a vote on that.
Nope. Yeah, all these are for informational for the board. But we can still run through them, I'm definitely more than happy to.
Chris, what do we use the flowable, Paul, what do we use the flowable fill for?
So the city has an ordinance that, any trench that is that runs perpendicular to the street, that is less than 20 feet long,
Yeah,
runs parallel to the street and is less than 20 feet long, or any trench that is perpendicular. So if we go out and we have a break on the main, typically we're not longer than 20 feet, so we need to flow fill that hole. If we go out, we have a service leak that runs perpendicular to the street, we have to use flow fill in that hole.
so this is like a not to exceed, this is just like
Correct.
a yardage price that we use to quantitate, alright, thank you.
Yep.
We, just a little bit of reference, for years and years and years, we didn't use flowable fill, and as you,
You can tell.
yeah, you could tell.
Sorry.
Our trenches
Yeah.
were notorious. Now we use flowable fill and our trenches are acceptable.
I think we had, where were we at it, ordinance like 10 years ago, maybe?
Yeah,
At one time, it was only on, what we had, just on really, on a particular.
Code 6 intersections, so major intersections we were using it. But then the city passed the ordinance and everybody's
Yeah.
gonna use it now.
Much better.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you reviewing?
Yep, so the next one is just regulatory dam inspections, park operation, $16,300. So these are required every 2 years for our high hazard dams. Phase 1 study that is required to be done by a PE. The next one on here is a change order, number 3, for CN Corp. Under the Phase 20 water main replacement. This change order is in the amount of $36,000. So on Pittman Street, we did a little bit more paving, just to, we didn't want to leave it patchwork. So the paving quantity went up, and then there was an increase to the allowance for adjustment of diesel fuels and other oil-based products in the contract, and that's required by the SRF funding program.
And Fall River Electrical Services?
Yep, so that's for our standard annual
Yeah.
electrical service contract. And then harbor controls for our annual SCADA maintenance contract.
The board has copies of that available.
Are there any potential matters to come before the board? Any questions, omissions? Hearing none, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So,
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.